Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the RSAWEB Veeam product webinar in partnership with Veeam. My name is Chris Marvick. I'm the head of engineering at RSAWEB. I'm also joined by Sean Rose, who is our cloud services expert. Also, a special welcome to our customers and webinar attendees. We will try and keep this very interactive. So if you have any questions during the session, then please feel free to post them in the chat window. And we will pick up those questions in between the session, and we will also have a Q&A session at the end, should you have anything specific that you want to ask the panel. Today we will be discussing how RSAWEB in partnership with Veeam can accelerate your business with modern data protection solutions. RSAWEB's been a Veeam partner for well over 5 years, and we've grown with the Veeam team as our customers' demands have changed over the last few years. Today, we use Veeam for hyper-availability of our customer systems as well as our own internal infrastructure. So without further ado, I would like to welcome our guest speakers from Veeam, Chris Norton, who is the Regional Director for Africa, and Matthew Lee, Cloud and Hosting Manager for Africa, and Ian Engelbrecht will also be joining us should there be any technical questions from any of the attendees. Chris and Matthew, thanks again for joining us today. Before we get into the content, Veeam 10 was released last year, and shortly after that, Veeam 11 followed this year. I'm sure you will answer some part of this in the session, but was the release time to answer challenges brought on by the COVID pandemic?
So Chris, let me take that one for you quickly. So I think the reality is that the backup and recovery space is very complex, but it's also very competitive. And Veeam has always been a technology company that's developed their own software. So we haven't actually grown our tooling by acquisition. So as we develop new functionality, we try to get it out to the market as quickly as possible, so that in many instances it's in response to requests or requirements from customers specifically, where they're trying to solve critical issues in terms of backup and recovery, or net new challenges presented by all the different use cases for data in the industry today. So I don't think it's specifically COVID related, although I think COVID did drive a lot of customers closer to the cloud the cloud strategy than a lot sooner than they thought they would get there.
Yeah, I think that's also what we've seen, Chris, is that, I think a lot of the features that Veeam's released in version 11 fundamentally addresses the problem that businesses currently face with remote workforce and protecting remote data and protecting data that's not within one central environment. Cool. I think we are ready to kickstart things.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you very much, Chris. Nice to meet everybody. Although I can't see anybody, I just see my presentation in front of me. But I trust you're all there, and we do thank you very much for making the time to hear us around how we can chat to you in conjunction with RSAWEB around accelerating your business and your modern data protection strategies. So I don't believe that, I'm just struggling to move over. There you go. I don't believe that there's a single person in this audience right now that has joined this call that wouldn't believe that 2020 was certainly a year of super challenges. Not only 2020, but even 2021. I mean, if you look at what happened in the business world, as well as if you look at what happened in our personal worlds, overnight, I mean, centralized IT departments, they had an immense amount of challenge that they had to face, and they were sort of super catapulted into becoming a support environment, but also not only that, but also provide the business with a functional way to operate, and now in this highly sort of distributed network manner. There were an increasing amount of remote workers that were starting to work from home. That obviously brings in a lot of that complexity. Not only that, but budgets didn't increase at that same time. Actually, as typically in true fashion, budgets are always tightened. People have to do more with less. The strategic plans that they maybe had in place from 2019 or 2018, that they were building a 3-year plan, those plans were probably slowed down or halted completely, redirected into new pots of effort. And at the same time, there was a massive increase of ransomware. I mean, we within the Veeam organization, we see almost daily end users, customers, and we read about it in the news, having ransomware attacks. You know, these things are happening. So this kind of tumultuous environment has really resulted in a new kind of set of challenges that customers have to face. And their plans for 2020 were shifted out, and actually in some cases even aborted completely. I think you heard earlier on the adoption, I think it was Chris you mentioned there, and you can see there the statistic, 96% of organizations accelerated their cloud plans in place. If you weren't thinking about it, or if it was something that they were evaluating or dipping their toes in the water to test the warmth and comfort of it, I think they fast-tracked a lot of that. Bring that into our own local environment. When we had the hashtag civil unrest in KZN and Gauteng, that certainly halted and actually put a big slowdown on the economic growth that we are facing as a country and businesses. So let's look how that looks now and how it looks in 2020 and move that forward into the new year. So how's 2021 been so far for these IT strategies? I mean, the results show massive investment changes in the way that IT is being delivered currently. In fact, only 4% of organizations surveyed were not really anticipating any kind of significant changes in 2021 and beyond, which is quite an interesting output. It's quite interesting that they would say that. As a result of the pandemic, 91% of organizations increased their usage for cloud services. You've heard that mentioned now. This came as a result of these remote workers utilizing software as a service based collaboration systems, software as a service based CRM systems, typically all these kind of functionality and features that software vendors have had to update and put in place that is now available for that ever-present and ever-working remote working environment. These are this O365, Office 365 hosted environment is available from RSAWEB. The backup around it is also available from RSAWEB, and we can talk to that as well as we move through the presentation. And this has subsequently provided these challenges for IT to maintain this on-prem, this cloud, this remote kind of operation that they have to bring into their environment. And this is going to continue. This is not going to stop. It's only going to grow. It's only going to get more complex. Hence, you need a trusted partner to be able to bring that back towards how you as an organization need to operate in your line of business. So the services that I speak about now are the services in the O365 space, as I say, the CRM space, but this is going to grow. You're going to see more cloud services coming out from different vendors, and maybe even some of those vendors that you traditionally have been using might actually become defunct, and you look to a new as a service provider to fulfill that same, or if not even better, functionality that you are used to. Obviously, that is just one step of that. You need to now have the actual support, the delivery, the support, the management of that environment as well. So as I've said, we saw this increase. We've seen the increase of ransomware attacks. And this is also due to the fact that data is now highly distributed, quite difficult if not managed correctly on how to actually back it up, and also due to the remote workforce. This shift must be considered in your plans when evaluating and examining the resources that you are allocating to your projects, such as data protection and the management of that data. With a large shift to cloud-based data, support systems like backup and DR must be modernized and modernized in parallel.
Sorry, just turn my camera back on to free up some bandwidth there. Turned it off. Sorry, Matt.
No problem.
So yeah, so thank you guys. Chris Norton. I didn't introduce myself earlier. Regional Director for Africa for Veeam. And that's quite correct, actually. You know, he talks about the complexity of the environments that have been created. 18 months ago, none of us or none of our customers were really aggressively deploying cloud. They were tactically deploying cloud, not necessarily strategically. And 18 months on, COVID has changed the world, and COVID was an inflection point for most people. You know, data center transformation, workforce transformation, application transformation, in general, IT transformation is on the tip of everyone's tongue. Every vendor is speaking about it, and every vendor has a plan for you. But the problem is that the environment is not either or, it's an and environment. And in many instances, customers are running hybrid cloud environments or hybrid environments where they have some on-premise, some virtual, and some applications that are sitting currently in the cloud. And the edge has moved. The edge of the data center, the edge of your users, and what used to be a luxury, being a limited number of road warriors in your business, is now every single employee. And you need to be able to protect against that. The challenge that we face, though, is that the traditional backup as we knew it when the data center was a physical data center that you had control over with definable firewalls, etc., no longer really exists. But what is left behind is the legacy of that. So the backup in that world was always just straightforward a backup and a recovery strategy. And unfortunately, that's a legacy backup and a backup and recovery strategy. And in many instances, and we see this daily, as Matt said, our customers have transformed their data centers, they've moved to cloud, but they haven't updated or transformed their backup strategy. And it's starting to play out. So when we look at that world, you know, and we survey organizations continuously, as do most of the vendors, you know, 23% of servers will have at least one planned outage, according to the customers that we surveyed or the organizations that we surveyed. They reported that 23% will have at least one planned outage. And 37% of those people surveyed also said that as much as 50% of their servers will experience an unplanned outage. Which is quite concerning when you consider that it's difficult to trust the integrity of the legacy environments. So we've just been so busy focusing on this cloud native world that we've started to lose sight of what's truly important, which is where in most cases our customers are running their mission critical or business critical applications, which is on the legacy platforms, because they haven't quite got the confidence yet to move them into cloud, because if they can't be secured in the cloud, customers are unlikely to move them there. The other reality here is that the research showed a whopping 37% of all backup jobs ended with errors or just couldn't complete. You know, the backup windows are too short, or they just can't make that backup window. And also a third, so 34% of those restorations are failing to restore within the expected SLAs, which is some scary figures when you actually start to consider what that maps back to. So, you know, if you look at that, more than half the time organizations won't be able to restore their servers due to the failed backups or failed recoveries, which is quite concerning. So there may be many factors that relate to this. That may be, you know, the legacy infrastructure, the skills available to keep that up. It may be the versioning of their backup and recovery tooling in the legacy environment hasn't been addressed. But the reality is that, you know, the modern data protection environment, the modern environments we require to protect are far more complicated than just a physical server with a physical data set that you need to back up and recover from. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what does the modern data protection environment promise you? What can you expect? So there are a number of things that you need to be able to consider. So first of all is, what is it that you're trying to back up? You're no longer just trying to back up something that's sitting in a physical environment or a virtual environment. There are multiple other solutions. There's X as a service, so platform, infrastructure, software as a service applications. There's cloud-based and cloud-native applications that need to be backed up. And within all of that, you need to manage certain things. So you need to be able to, first of all, drive complexity out of the environment. Complexity in any environment always drives a cost element for you. And I mean, I don't think I need to spell it out to everyone how complicated these environments are becoming. And where that data sits is more and more critical in terms of your ability to back it up than it used to be in the past. The ability to meet your RPOs and RTOs, especially on mission critical applications. So being able to deliver technologies like continuous data protection to reduce the RPOs and RTOs in the environment to mere seconds, as opposed to minutes, weeks, minutes, days, or months, minutes, hours, days, or months. And being able to deliver that is quite important. Matt mentioned the reliable ransomware or the requirement for ransomware protection, a 7-fold increase in the number of attacks. You know, it's ransomware and cyber threats are very much like COVID. You know, before it used to just be something that was reported in the news that was a number. And it's more and more, it's becoming people you know, and actually friends and family are being attacked. And it's critical that we're able to put ourselves in a position and put our customers in a position to modernize and to increase their ability or to recover from those things. In as much as the cyber criminals are becoming more and more, technologically advanced, we need to put more, better solutions in place with customers in order to be able to detect, protect, and recover in the event of a cyber attack. You know, in the past it was just a straight 2. You back up, and you had 2 copies of your data, production and DR. That's no longer good enough in any environment, and you actually need to have a 3-2-1-1-0 strategy, as we like to talk about it. So 3 copies of your data, 2 on different media. So 3 copies of your data, 2 of those on different media, 1 off-site completely, 1 immutable copy. So that off-site copy should typically be immutable and air-gapped, and then 0 errors when you restore. So you don't want to restore an infected backup to your production environment. So leveraging the tool sets that you have through some of the very credible antivirus and malware protection tool sets that are out there, we can scan that data before we restore it into the infrastructure. Then being able to accelerate, the cloud adoption in your business gives you a certain amount of agility. The problem, though, that we find with a lot of our customers is that they can't move confidently to cloud. So they don't move their business critical applications to the cloud environments. And as these hyperscalers become, more and more pervasive, and in the industry, their solutions will become more and more standardized, which is leaving a very nice opportunity for our partners like RSAWEB to create bespoke solutions for customers where there are critical applications and the customers would like some level of confidence in terms of the ability to protect that data and recover in the event that something happens. And then last but not least is being able to deploy cloud native applications and back them up. So Veeam back in 2006 in South Africa, when I started VMware in South Africa, Veeam was a critical partner for us with our customers in being able to back up virtual machines. Veeam have recently purchased, or some time ago, actually a year and a half ago, purchased a company called Kasten, and that gives them the ability to back up Kubernetes native applications, the applications themselves, as well as the data sets that ensue from those applications. What that basically means, guys, is that as important as virtualization was to the industry, Kubernetes, I think, and containerization will be for the application environment in the future in terms of driving your cloud native strategy, next generation applications, etc. And the ability to back that up is quite important. But more importantly is the ability to do all of this with one single platform and also one single license structure. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the presentation.
Thank you, Chris. We've got a question just around continuous data protection on the previous slide. Maybe that's just more for the panel. If you can maybe just elaborate on what does continuous data protection mean? Veeam obviously provides you that single pane of glass for your backups, so you can back up all different pieces of your infrastructure. Might that be software as a service, which is Office 365, or on-prem, or VMs? But how does continuous data protection fit into that?
So I'll take a shot at answering it, and if I come up short, then I'm sure Ian or Matt will join in. But so for mission critical applications, it's critical to, it's important that you're able to reduce the RPO, the recover point objective, from minutes. If you've got a billing application that's generating R1 million a minute, as in the case of some of our telco entities, etc., they can't afford. Seconds cost time in what are those things called? Any environment where latency is your enemy. Latency in backups is also your enemy. So the ability to actually be able to reduce that RPO to seconds can save millions and millions of rands. And I wouldn't suggest you did it for every single application, because there obviously would be an overhead to it. However, for your mission critical applications, it's the same as having continuous availability in a virtual world. We have two virtual machines in physical lockstep with another on two different physical hosts. It's a similar scenario here. You can recover. Your recover point is seconds rather than minutes or hours.
Thank you, Chris. So that's to just to add to that. That specifically you would add it to a database where data data integrity is of utmost important, and then if you need to restore, you can go back in a few seconds.
Yeah, I can add to that. It's Ian here. What I would say is we have two types of protection. We have near CDP and we have CDP. So it's near continuous and continuous. And the idea, like Chris mentioned, is to reduce the RPO objectives. So there are specific workloads and applications that would fit in a category where a sub-minute data loss is not acceptable. So losing just a few seconds on it would be, cost you in transactions. So in those cases, we would apply something called CDP, which is the completely different technology to our near continuous data protection. So the one is using a universal point-in-time replication. So we'd take it on, every 15 minutes or 5 minutes, and we'd replicate that data. Continuous data protection would be an IO clone, so we can clone every transaction and replicate that and apply that in a DR fashion to then avoid transactional data loss. You can have a blend of both. So we're allowing IT organizations and customers to split up their workloads based on their requirements. So you would have SLAs attached to different applications and would treat each one differently. And with the mixture of features from Veeam, you can then achieve that complete strategy. Thanks.
Thanks, Ian.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so all of this might sound super confusing. You need to modernize at the same time. You need to look at how you're adopting your cloud strategy. You've got security and ransomware knocking on your door every day. At the same time, you have to future-proof your platform, your infrastructure, your business, and everything that goes around that. So at Veeam, we have 4 very specific pillars in how to build and deliver these solutions to help you really be at ease with the technology that you've chosen, and the fact that you can be able to restore all of that data should something happen. First of all, the first pillar or first tenet, it needs to be simple. It needs to be simple in the way that it's deployed, simple in the way that it is managed from a centralized UI, a user interface. And that obviously brings a reduction in cost, obviously the complexity that goes with that, with an immediate return on investment. The second pillar is it needs to be flexible. Flexibility is something that has to be software defined. it must be surely hardware agnostic. You can't be locked into any sort of hardware vendor, and it should be cloud ready. And you want to be able to run this Veeam solution anywhere, across any data center, across the edge, across the cloud. So any platform, any storage, any cloud. The third pillar is reliability. You want to be able to have confidence that your data is protected and always available. And I think that's critical. We've just spoken about CDP, that always available feature. We hear it. It's quite a nice little tag word. And our customers say it again and again. Veeam just works. It just works. And certainly it needs to be powerful. That's the fourth tenet. Fast, secure, scalable, and future-proof for the enterprise. Our patented instant recovery enables lightning-fast mass recovery at a scale in case of any outage.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, I think the reality for most customers is, and you've all heard this before, everyone talks about it, is that your people and your data are your two most valuable assets in any organization. And the way you treat them is actually quite different. And we wouldn't treat our people sometimes quite the way we treat our data. And we would all be held up to multiple criminal courts if we did that. But data is critical. And any outage, we used to plan for in the past was typically a fire, it was an earthquake, it was an explosion in the data center, it was maybe a virus or malware attack that was controllable, but it didn't wipe all of our data. It just created denial of service attacks, etc. The complication of that has become a lot more. And the ability to protect against all the different threats that we're faced with on a daily basis, given the number of environments we have to manage, is significant. So the ability to actually protect that data becomes very, very critical. The other thing is being able to manage that data. It's very difficult to protect something if you've got no control over the data itself. So being able to actually orchestrate the data to ensure that you are compliant, and as we all know, there are multiple complexities around GDPR and POPIA and all sorts of things that we're faced with on a daily basis that we need to include in terms of our ability to manage that data. The concept of immutability, and we spoke about that a little bit earlier, but immutability is quite a critical component, the ability to time lock your data so that in the event of an attack, or some sort of cyber security attack, cyber threat, you can be resilient and you can recover a copy of your data that nobody has been able to change for a defined period of time as stipulated or set out by your organization. And then also the ability to monitor and remediate. So prevention is often better than cure. And using some of the machine learning and AI tool sets that we have available, you're able to track what does normal look like, and if anything appears out of the normal, we can flag that and share that with you. So protection and management are pretty much one and the same thing, and they all point to consistently managed data across multiple platforms. Another component of modern data protection is actually, backups were always an insurance policy, and none of us like insurance because it has very little commercial value for us until something goes horribly wrong. And, the ability to actually unleash value from or extract value from backed up data starts to give it some form of commercial value, especially with the DevOps type environments where you don't want to create applications with test data. You want to actually use production data. And if we can sandbox some of your production data without impacting your backup or recovery strategy, and allow your test and dev teams to use production data, that gives it some form of commercial value to run AI and machine learning engines, to run all the different tool sets that you'd like to run against your backup data, rather than, which is in effect a copy of your production data, without impacting production, is also quite a valuable option. and it's something that we would allow you to do, is the ability to actually reuse the data that's currently sitting in your backup for business critical purposes, as opposed to having to impact your production environments. And we do this all using the Veeam platform. So let me show you a little bit about what that Veeam platform would look like. So Veeam has typically uniquely created data, this modern data protection concept through the Veeam platform, and it's built based on the #1 backup solution, and it's been really designed to accelerate business agility. You know, regardless of whether that's on premise, whether it's in the public cloud, or whether it's backup or DR as a service. It's the foundation necessary really to simplify backup and recovery and transform the way that companies manage and leverage their data. Be that cloud-based data, cloud-based SaaS apps, virtual or physical, regardless of the platform, regardless of the technology or the vendor that you're trying to support, we can provide you with the capabilities there, the ability to reuse data, the ability to orchestrate data recovery, and not only fail over, but fail back as well. Monitoring and analytics. So how do we actually monitor the environment, analyze what's happening, and report back based on any anomalies? Obviously, typically backup and recovery is important, and we want to build that on the best possible platform that money can buy. And then also storage and analytic management, analytic and management APIs as well. And we do that using the Veeam Availability Suite. We do it with Veeam Backup and Replication. We do it backup for Microsoft Office 365. Not many people, or most customers, believe that if they're running Office 365, the data is backed up. I would suggest you go and read the fine print. It's not actually backed up. Then Veeam DR Orchestrator, Kasten K10, the Veeam One tool sets, etc. There are a number of technologies that Veeam use in order to deliver this platform. And in order to make it simple and cost effective, you can either buy it as a suite or you can buy it as individual products. Typically through our partners, they provide the full Veeam Availability Suite. So RSAWEB would deploy the full Veeam Availability Suite, and they would allow you to pick and choose the functionality that you would require for your data if you were using RSAWEB as a backup as a service, or as a service scenario in a cloud service provider platform.
Chris, we've got a question. You've mentioned something about Microsoft 365, and I think to your point, a lot of customers are not aware about the shared responsibility according to Microsoft's T's and C's. Question for the panel. How easy is it to back up your 365, and how easy is it to restore your 365 data in the event that one of your users are basically exposed due to ransomware potentially?
So the short answer is it's easy. For the rest of the answer, I think I'd need to hand over to somebody more intelligent than myself. But maybe, I don't know, maybe Ian, you could explain that.
Sure. Yeah. So the Office 365 backup runs through the Graft API into Office 365, and it's pretty intuitive. It can run. The benefits of it from Veeam is that it can run in any infrastructure. Really, you can have that Veeam backup for Office 365 running in Azure, in AWS, in GCP, in IBM Cloud, on public cloud, RSAWEB cloud. It can be in data center if you wanted to. You could install it on physical tin, and that's the beauty of it. It's more about the control you have of the data that you're backing up out of Office 365. We have purpose-built explorers, which are little GUI tools that allow you to do granular restores back into Office 365. So the likes of OneDrive, Exchange, SharePoint, and Teams. And this makes it pretty easy to manage your Office 365 data. Another key functionality from our side is that Office 365 as a SaaS solution doesn't charge you egress cost. However, they do throttle you on usage. So we have a clever way on how we interface with Office 365 by using multiple auxiliary backup accounts, so that if we do get throttled, we can just switch over to another account and we can keep that performance of backup going.
Like I said, I'll hand over to somebody way cleverer than me.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Chris. Another question around moving data between hyperscalers and a public cloud like RSAWEB. So we obviously have customers that have data in various parts and various systems. So is it easy to maintain that 3 to 1 backup strategy if you have data sitting in AWS, for example? Do you need direct connect for that, or in your normal AWS account, can you easily ingest the data into RSAWEB to ensure that it's in more than one place?
So let me start off again, Chris, and just say, you know, it's not the value in terms of the hyperscalers for them is Hotel California style type environments. Once you check in, they don't ever want you to check out. So they're not exactly going to make it incredibly easy for you to move data between public and private clouds, etc. And they want to charge for whenever you do. But maybe Ian can give a little bit more insight in terms of the data portability between the environments.
Sure, yeah. So across all the Veeam products, we have a standard format that we create backups. So we create a image-based backup of service regardless from what platform it comes. That is in the format of a VBK or VIB, which means a full backup or an incremental backup. And what that allows us to do is create portability. So whether we took a full backup or incremental backup on VMware and we want to restore that to Hyper-V, or we took that backup from AWS or from Azure or from GCP, we can restore that to any platform because we've kept it in a portable, mobile fashion, and it's in our proprietary format. What we see a lot of customers doing is using Veeam for a cloud mobility function. Some customers would deploy a workload into AWS and then decide, you know what, it runs too expensive here. I want to put this workload into Azure. Now, if you have 6 months worth of backups natively in that cloud, they are, you know, you'd have to throw them away because that workload running in Azure, you wouldn't be able to use those backups you've taken for the last 6 months. So Veeam giving you that portability, you can have the backups created for that VM in EC2, AWS, and it moves to Azure as a VM. You can still use the same backups. And that's data portability.
So, Chris, that maps back to, you know, I think the probably the most valuable tool or application anyone would be able to create now would be a cost monitoring application that sits on the front of your environment and monitors the cost of running your applications and data in the multiple cloud options you have available to you. And if anyone could create that and effectively deploy it, so that you could move your data. Let's, for argument's sake, the RAND fell out of bed tomorrow. It's done it before, and I'm sure it'll do it again at some point in time. And it suddenly becomes way more cost effective to run your infrastructure and applications because you don't have that equipment in your data center anymore on a local service, a cloud service provider, rather than one of the hybrid, so the hyperscalers, because they bill in dollars and you can have a local billing in RAND, which clearly at that point in time makes more sense. Would you be able to move your virtual, your cloud-based infrastructure seamlessly? And you know, that's where it'll all end up in time, I think, is that complete, the automated and fluid back-end infrastructure where applications just move based on cost.
Yeah, rightly so, Chris, and I think that's the challenge that most customers face, is that those hidden fees that sometimes are there with the hyperscalers. But we definitely see and a lot of the customers using the availability suite, obviously, to move VMs around. So it might be expensive today to run on AWS, but they find that it's rather more cost effective and makes more commercial sense to run on RSAWEB and only use the backup potentially on AWS. Yeah.
So look, if data is as important as we all think it is, the backup and the management and the control of that data is very, very important as well. And I think the reality is, having come personally from an infrastructure background for the last 6 years, the cost of data management in your environment is a rounding error when compared to the cost of the infrastructure you would require in order to run that on. And so, it's quite important that people make the right decision and align with the right partners, who are using industry trusted and selected, industry trusted tool sets, as opposed to, me too type technologies.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Well, that conversation certainly teed in nicely into this next slide. I think downtime doesn't necessarily, we spoke about insurance, it's not something that it doesn't affect only a few people. It actually it affects the entire organization, no matter who you are, the company owner, somebody who works there. And it's also not a matter, it's also a matter of, not a matter of sort of if it happens, it's a matter of when it happens. And as Chris correctly says, partner with an industry leader, Veeam being #1 in EMEA, RSA providing a rock solid environment in South Africa. You're pretty good to go here. There was a CIO who spoke to Veeam and actually gave us quite a lovely testimony, which I'll cover at the end. But just before I get to that, if you look at what happened in 2020, the average downtime for an outage was just under 80 minutes. You can imagine the monetary cost that provided to that organization. So, but your downtime and this impact can not only be measured completely on cost. There are other potential downsides to outages that do happen. Things that we might not even think about. Things like if you look at the impact of a downtime in terms of 3 sort of defining points, you've got that external impact. That could be a loss of a customer confidence and damage to the brand. If somebody is not able to order something online, I don't know if you're like me, I'm slowly adopting online purchase, but if I can't get something immediately, I don't like the fact that that I'm not able to, that I've moved through a purchasing cycle online, and then all of a sudden I'm unable to sort of make that payment due to whatever reason, because that payment system might be down. So their front-end web server might be up, but that payment system that you move over might be down. So there's definitely, and I very rarely would go back and visit that online shop again. There's the internal impact. That could be things like employees' morale and a diversion of resources. This is that resource allocation that we spoke about earlier on in the presentation. And then of course there's litigation and regulation. This is something that could have, if you're a listed company, this could have a major or significant effect. Even if you're not, you're still required to comply to certain regulations that are out in the market. And this could have a significant effect on your country, on your company's valuation and certainly the reputation. So this is why you want to look at that sort of modern data protection and what that can bring to the party. And that brings this confidence, this operational excellence, by ensuring that your data is always protected and always available. And as well as many of the other economic and productivity benefits that I've mentioned above. Organizations that are using these tried and tested industry-leading modern data protection services such as Veeam, these guys are experiencing significant cost savings. I mean, if we look at a 280% over a 5-year return on investment, that's massive. That is just a no-brainer in my books. They will also benefit. Another benefit they will see is an increase in their recovery objectives, their recovery point objectives, their recovery time objectives, and obviously more substantial ransomware protection. We've hammered on that, but I think that is something that we really need to be cognizant of right now. Of course, there's the cost side of that aspect as well. So, just as a matter of fact, about 95% of our Veeam customers that are utilizing Veeam right now have actually experienced little or no financial impact at all due to any ransomware attacks that might have been knocking on their door. They also had a 3 times shorter backup window and greater than a 55% more recovery points objective and recovery time objective that was met. So I think that speaks volumes.
So Matt, let me just go back one step there. So you know, we talk about 95% of our customers. I never thought I'd see the day that some of these CIOs that are customers that we negotiate with actually break down in tears. But of late, I've seen grown men cry. I've seen businesses halted. Myself and Ian have been on calls with people where they're begging us to assist them in terms of their data recovery because they did not have a modern data protection strategy. And we've kind of harped on it here because backup as a service is critical in terms of creating that immutable copy, and in our partners like RSAWEB are more than capable and more than willing to support customers in building that backup as a service copy, and the offsite copy, and the immutable copy, so that 1.1 portion of the 3.2.1.1.0 strategy. And that 5% that get hit are typically the customers that have not modernized their data protection strategy. They've just left it as is, and they've ignored it and hoped that in the cloud they would back the cloud service providers would back up for you in the cloud, and their on-premise stuff has kind of just been left and ignored to a certain extent and hasn't moved with the times. Reality is, don't get caught, and don't be one of those companies that phones us and literally in tears, because people lose their jobs, people are compromised significantly in terms of their credibility if they haven't planned appropriately in that space.
It's fantastic, Chris. And actually what I want to do is I want to just read a letter that a CIO actually sent to Veeam 2 weeks ago. It's not public yet. It will become public, but just because it's not public, we will retract the name. But I just want to just read the story to you. This is what this CIO sent to our CEO. He said, "Your product saved our company. We were hit last Saturday at 2:30 a.m. It always happens when you least expect it, by the Contrary strain of ransomware. Every single server, many there were, and every single desktop, they were both virtual and physical, and there were hundreds of these things, were rendered useless. All data of every kind was gone. We immediately went into offline restore mode while contacting the Homeland Security and FBI. This happened obviously in the US, and our cybersecurity insurance company, who put us in touch with a high-level forensics team. While bringing all things back up, we changed over 400 passwords for users, services, etc. And by Tuesday, we were back in operation. Having Veeam on a separate no domain host, speaking to the 3.2.1.1.0 policy, with distinct credentials and quality of your product has kept this company in business without paying $1 damn in ransom. Please pass this huge thank you around to your team and celebrate with us as I will. I will never consider an alternative to this product, and I will shout it from the rooftops to every technical executive that I know." And this is the kind of stuff that we want to shout just as far and wide as the CIO. Ian, I think you got something you want to add there?
Oh, yes. Yeah, apologies. Just on the ransomware topic, I just wanted to mention, from experience and what we've seen is it's twofold. It's one where you have to actually protect your copies, and the other is you also need to protect your data from being stolen, your IP from being taken. The ransomware gangs are not just removing the ability to restore your data, but also stealing your information and sharing that online, or holding you ransom by leaking this information. So we have security around the product, as well as we have protection around the product to safeguard the copies that we've created, and that's the immutability, that's the offline copies. One of the benefits of what we spoke about before about the mobility is that if you were running backups in your data center with Veeam on-prem, and there was a vulnerability or a cyber threat or a breach inside your data center, you could quickly recover that information into the likes of RSAWEB data centers, either in Joburg or in Cape Town. You could also move data into different clouds, or you could move from different clouds down into RSAWEB or vice versa. So a lot of customers run production workloads as infrastructure as a service in public hyperscaler clouds, but there are instances where ISPs in the country have DNS outages and suddenly you can't access your cloud platform. And this is where we can quickly restore whatever we've taken backups of in Azure, AWS onto the likes of RSAWEB, which is sitting in country as well, and maybe sitting on different connectivity. So it's not always good to have all your eggs in a single basket, but if you spread your data across these different platforms, they have dependencies on different connectivity solutions. It allows you to quickly move data as you need it, depending on the scenario, whether it be a natural disaster or a cyber threat at the end of the day. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
And just to add to that, I think what we've added for a lot of customers, and some of the customers are only starting to explore this now, is to mitigate those issues by establishing a direct connect or express route to Azure, for example. And I've seen that many times actually saved a lot of customers where public routing or public internet will actually be down, either due to a DNS issue or sometimes AWS might have public outages. And that really takes care of that problem. But just on another point, can you maybe explain what does air gap mean? So we explained the term, you did explain the term immutable, but where does air gap fit into actually taking care of ransomware attacks on your data?
Sure. So, like I said, 2 separate attacks. One is where they breach your infrastructure and they actually take your data and then hold you ransom by threatening to share this this information online. It could be IP, it could be sensitive information that would hurt the company, right? So what companies do is they focus on the first line of protection, which is generally security, locking down the infrastructure, but you need a last line of defense, which is backup. And what these ransomware organizations and gangs have figured out is that a lot of customers don't give in to their demands because they have a backup. So what their modus operandi now is that they go into the infrastructure and the first thing they do is delete any safeguards you have. So they delete your backups and then encrypt or steal the data, and you have no choice but to pay the ransom. So what we've done is provided capabilities to lock that information to avoid them from compromising your backup copies. And that is a air-gapped backup or immutability. Now, an air-gap backup means we take a copy and we put it offline. And the options there are something like tape. And the other option would be using a cloud service provider, like RSAWEB, to keep the backups on their cloud off of your infrastructure, which is considered offsite air-gapped. That can also have what's called insider protection. So if they were able to see it from your infrastructure and try and delete it, it would be a recycled bin on the other end of the cloud that you could then put that data back. And then the immutability is something that you can apply in all the different locations. So whether it's on RSAWEB or it's in your data center or if it's in public cloud, you can lock the copies of data that you created and have a policy against them that they can only be deleted after X amount of days. And what that does is it provides what's called worm type storage, which is write once, read many. And you can create the data and edit it once, and that is during backup. And after that fact, you can only read the information. And what that does is that the ransomware gangs cannot change the information based on that policy. They could potentially only read it. But in that fact, we just apply encryption to it. And the data is immutable and encrypted. So they can't read the information and they can't change the information. And this is key to protecting your backup copies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ian.
So in summary then, and just to close out, we're running out of time here, but I want to make one comment on the slide, and it's the last sentence of that Gartner, the Gartner component there. So Veeam continues to lead and be a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. It's important to a lot of our customers in South Africa. Forest is also important. Market share and all of those figures, the number of customers, all vendors like to put that up. But the comment I'd like to make in terms of being 2 years is the highest ability to execute is to all our competitors out there. Vision without execution is hallucination. Thank you to RSAWEB for your trust in Veeam, and that we really respect and appreciate the partnership, and we hope that we will be able to support you and your customers for many years to come.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Ian, for joining us today. The floor is open at the moment to ask any questions. We still have a few minutes left. If you don't have any questions at the moment, you're also welcome to email our sales team, sales@rsaweb.net. Also, our contact number is there, but people don't really phone these days, they just email. Yeah, I think if you need a free assessment of your current backup strategy, you can also just reach out to us, and we're more than willing to assess that with you, and also with our Veeam experts. They can also help make some recommendations in terms of how you can mitigate future security risks, and also ensure that you reduce the downtime in the event that there's a failure. We do not have any questions. Thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.